The following wee Fil'm, as my nanny might say, was produced to pay tribute to what may, at first glance, be an ordinary woman. A vivacious and kind, ordinary woman, whose life would span precisely 8.5 decades, 4 weeks and 1 day, whose legacy would extend 3 generations and give birth to 23 souls thus far. An ordinary wee bonny baby, born Marjorie Burr on the 19th of June 1936. A Friday's child, she would be loving and giving, an ordinary woman who worked hard for a living and lived for fun. She would be known by her marital name, Marjorie Chiverton, until her final farewell. To some, she was Mum. To others, she was Madge. To me, she was Nanny. And now that I think about it, there wasn't a lot that was ordinary about her. Marjorie's story begins by the sea, nestled in the green pastures of the ancient county of Banffshire in the Scottish Highlands, and this would be the landscape that would raise her. Marjorie's first mystery, though it would neither plague nor define her, would be the unknown identities and whereabouts of her birth parents.
The children were offered to local families who'd be paid to become their foster parents. There were no references, there were few checks.
Big babies, little babies, fat babies, thin babies, curly heads and Goldilocks, they all turn up full of hope.
Legend had it, a wee bonny baby was placed on a doorstep of a religious building somewhere nearby. The first recorded account of her history is printed in her own handwriting on the back of a special photograph and reads,
I am speaking to you from the cabinet room at 10 Downing Street.
Before the Wilsons, though the details are hazy, Marjorie would recall living here, in a stone cottage in the quaint fishing town of Portsoy. With its harbour, the oldest of the Moray Firth coast, dating back to the 17th century, and its shores swarming with fish, Portsoy has a rich history, and produced fellas like the wandering musician Jimmy McBeath.
She wakes me in the morning in a very cruel way. She kicks me on the floor and not a hard word do I say. I have to wash my stockings, my shirts and pants I vow, and if I don't wash hers as well, there's bound to be a row. There's bound to be a row. There's bound to be a row. I do all my life to please my wife.
But Marjorie's memories would be carved from playing with the village children, amongst castle ruins dotted along the shores. And her memories were fond, though she would never forget the mistreatment suffered as a result of her carers' harsh discipline methods.
Now may God bless you all,
There were no references. There were few checks.
for it is evil things that we shall be fighting against. Brute force, bad faith, injustice, oppression, and persecution.
The Wilson family lived in a home occupying a corner plot overlooking green pastures as far as the eye could see, 2 miles inland from Portsoy, in the village of Fordyce. Here, a wee Marjorie would attend Fordyce Academy and form many bonds with her peers. None so special, however, as the one she had with her best friend, whom, as fate or other forces would have it, would be living right next door. The Robertson family, Doreen, born just 3 months after Marjorie, and her 13 siblings, living with their mummy and daddy. The next prominent guardian to come into her life would be kind, gentle, an older woman living in an old stone cottage on Church Street. Granny Coulthard, as she would be known, would provide the home and care she needed. And so she would grow up, under the watchful eyes of a tight-knit community, providing safety to roam from sweet shop to burn to farmyard. And it turned out, freedom rather suited her. At 15 years old, Marjorie's schooling was complete, though her education just beginning. In 1951, she would embark on her first solo adventure that would lead her 164 miles south to the town of Bridge of Allan, where she would reside in the stunning mansion known as Uplands, designed by the Scottish architect William Laper in 1907. It was here, 3 hours from her hometown, that Marjorie would train for the vocation that would last her lifetime. Marjorie was barely 18 years old when she was awarded her diploma by the Institution of Houseworkers Limited. And she barely hung around to receive it, as the following letter from her course leader attests. My dear Marjorie, I am enclosing your diploma to you as I wish you to have it before Christmas. I had always hoped you would be at the centre to visit us, but I am afraid you have now most of your friends in Edinburgh. Still, we would like to see you one day. I was pleased to have good reports of your work and to know that you are now an associate member of the Institute. And once the city of Edinburgh had stolen her heart, there was no turning back. For a wee lass from the Highlands, the grand city of Edinburgh, with its hustle and bustle, might have been a culture shock. But Marjorie had been born with a sense of adventure, and she loved it. It was in these coming-of-age years, surrounded by the greatest of pals, that Marjorie would meet the young man she would describe as the love of her life. His name was Norman William Chiverton, a naval man, hailing from the opposite end of the Great British Isles, the Isle of Wight, where the Chiverton family were prominent. Somewhere in the city, in a hall on a Saturday night, Marjorie Burr responded to Norman Chiverton's request to dance, with the suggestion that he might ask her friend instead, since she herself was shy. Still, Norman only had eyes for his darling Madge, and late in August of 1957, at 21 years old, Marjorie Burr takes the first of many adventures across sea to the town of Newport on the Isle of Wight to begin life in her new role of Navy wife.
I'll give you the keys of my chest, or the money that I possess. If you will marry, yaddy, 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 you will marry me.
Yes, I'll take the keys you chest, and all the money that you possess, and I will marry, I will marry, I will marry you. I'll go marry, I'll go marry, I'll go marry you.
7 months later, she would become a mother.
Come, all you all-eyed seamen that to the seas belong, I'll tell you all the fight me boys.
In fact, this was to be the beginning of what might have been a grueling 9 years of pregnancies and nursing. We won't know how grueling. She didn't complain about it once.
Thank heaven for father. In all conscience, he's been so shy and embarrassed standing by the nursery window staring at his daughter. He's probably quite useless. All the same, it's a relief to have him here.
Indeed, she gave birth to 6 babies, suffered 1 miscarriage, and adjusted to motherhood from naval quarters in 3 separate countries. From 22 years of age to 31, that's almost a decade caring for babies. And still, she wouldn't know her own mother until her children were fully grown. But we'll get back to that. For now, our story follows the charted waters of HMS Chiverton and its fast expanding fleet. And we set sail from the Isle of Wight, Mr. and Mrs. Norman Chiverton, and their own wee bonny baby girl, Norma Ann. This time, further than Marjorie had ever been, to the island of Malta. The capital city of Valletta, on the east coast of Malta, had been the Royal Navy's principal Mediterranean base and would soon be the birthplace for firstborn son, Eric. For by the time of Norma's first birthday, Marjorie was expecting again. We can assume the now family of 4 would be living in Navy quarters whilst Norman was stationed at Valletta's ancient port. What we know for certain is that just 21 months later, the family were back on the Isle of Wight, welcoming Ian, another boy, to the clan. And 6 months on, Marjorie would be expecting again. Her second daughter, Maria, would be born in Southeast Asia, in the suburb of Kranji, in Singapore. Even in monsoon season, temperatures a steady 30 degrees Celsius, which may have been a wee bit more than Marjorie was used to. Following Maria would be baby Sandra, not quite 2 years later, and once again, the family would be on the island, their 5th bonny baby being born at Freshwater. Another pregnancy would follow, with a babe not for this earth, before finally, baby Peter would arrive, on Valentine's Day, no less, to complete the clan. And what a clan it was. By 1967, Marjorie was in her early 30s and now a mother to 6. Norman would take infinite leave from his naval duties, and the family would drop anchor in Runnymede in Surrey. Essex Close, a stone's throw from the newly built, ever-imposing Surrey Towers, would be home to the family of 8. Mostly, it was a vibrant community setting where lasting friendships and even romance flourished. The children went to local schools. Darley Dean for infants, Sayes Court for middle school, and St Paul's for seniors. And Marjorie began working for the NHS. When holidays were taken, they were taken by car. Norman's mint green Ford Zephyr, full to capacity, babes on laps, kids squashed like sardines, on the 9-hour drive to Marjorie's Scotland. Cullen Bay would be the destination, a caravan for the week. A hike up the mountains for the bigger kids, flowered baps and kippers for all. And sometimes there would be a trip to Uncle George and Auntie Nellie's farm. Granny Coltheart's brother George had been a farmer all his life, and he and his wife were always welcoming of Marjorie's visits, though she wouldn't make them often. Life at number 10 Essex Close would always be busy, but not always harmonious.
The bow section of the tanker sank immediately, but the stern remained afloat for hours.
The painful period that was to follow would crash through the family like a tidal wave and provide rippling effects in its wake,
and drifted some way before sinking.
and thus would mark one of the darkest times in both Marjorie's life and the lives of her 6 children. After 17 years of marriage, the couple would part ways, and Norman would move out of the family home in Essex Close and head towards the Midlands. Marjorie would nurse her heart and make ends meet by working varying shift patterns, taking care of those in need at Botley Park Hospital, and here she would stay for 40 years. And the children would grow, and Norma would marry the boy next door, and grandbabies would begin to arrive. As a nanny, Marjorie was a great source of comfort, forever nursing and tending and fiercely defending, and cuddly and kind. She had an infectious laughter, would speak her mind, at times without filter, and continued to let her adventurous spirit guide her through her senior years. It took her to Spain, Cyprus, Switzerland, back to Singapore, and even to Sydney, Australia, as did the love of her children, whom in turn, fueled by curiosity and armed with Marjorie's astute memory, traced her birth mother and provided more of the pieces to Marjorie's childhood puzzle. Violet Burr had been a fisherman's daughter. At 21, she had fallen pregnant with her first baby, a wee girl, whom, in the late 80s, would finally get to hug her mother and meet her half-brothers and sisters. Violet would see her granddaughter Maria and exclaim, "Oh, you're a Robertson." And Marjorie would remember Mr. Robertson, her childhood neighbour, whom had taken her in his van to Biggin Hill in Kent for weekends away. And Doreen, her best friend, potentially her sister? They say it takes a village to raise a child, and though we may never know her da for certain, I believe it was the love of a close community, mothers and fathers, grannies and grandpies, brothers and sisters, that kept Marjorie Burr, an illegitimate child born out of wedlock, from suffering the same fate as so many of her peers. Though some of her years would certainly contain a lot of pain, Marjorie Burr sure did learn to dance in the rain and had peace in her heart. She would leave this earth wearing 2 bands of gold on the 3rd finger of her left hand, a symbol of her faith in the everlasting constitution of family. And so I should like to conclude Nanny's wee Fil'm with her own words, which remain woven into her legacy and stay with me forever. They seem to be etched into the very fabric of her life, stemming all the way from Fordyce. Ordinary words for an extraordinary life. An extraordinary grandmother who knew how to keep the peace and would always remind us to be good to one another.
I was wondering if we could take a picture of all of us, Mum.
Yeah?
Yeah. Nanny?
Do you want to give Nanny's hair a
Do you
bit
mind
of
if
a
I...
comb?
No, it's fine.
She just got out of bed.
It's fine, it's lovely. I was going to take a picture of us all. Do you mind?
But
Do you mind if I take a picture of all of us?
no,
You don't mind?
no,
What
I
should we
don't
do?
mind.
Where should we
I don't mind.
Should we sit near Nanny on Nanny's bench?
Nanny,
Yeah,
sit
let's
down.
sit down, Nanny.
And then me and
You sit down, we'll go on the side. What? And like this?
No, I was going to do that.
Alright. Ah, that's lovely.
Nanny's white hair.
Yeah.
Do you like my silver hair?
I love your silver hair. Yeah.
I look like the Queen, don't I?
I like it.